Welcome everyone to part 5 of the FireBlade Revival series. In the last episode we did the pair, flapper, and servo delete. And there's a reason why I did those last episode, and that is for all of this glorious space. I have so much more room in here to do some of the long-awaited maintenance to this poor, neglected FireBlade. This FireBlade currently has over 25,000 miles on it and has been sitting for years before I brought it back to life. Now I think this old girl deserves some proper love. So to start, let's go ahead and change out those spark plugs. Spark plugs can be an intimidating job, but they're actually really easy to do. First, you disconnect the plug wire and remove the coil. Sometimes these can get stuck, but a twist will usually help pop it right off. Once the coil is unseated, you need to pull it up towards the front of the bike to clear the brace. Now we have the fun part of removing the plug. It's always a good idea to try and use compressed air to blow out the plug hole from any debris that may have fallen into the engine. I used a 17mm spark plug socket attached to an extension going from the front of the bike. I was able to angle it down and let it fall into the plug hole. Next, I recruit some help from a handy swivel mount and attach it to an extension. This will give me the ability to add another extension and a ratchet. Now I can just turn the ratchet and the plug will easily start backing out. Once it's fully removed, I now have to remove the extension and start pulling the swivel and socket out of the engine, going back towards the front of the bike like we did before. Now as you can see, I dropped the plug back into the hole. This isn't a big deal, especially if you have a magnet on a stick. Great, now that we fished that out, let's take a look at this plug. This plug doesn't look too bad actually, but it's still a good thing I'm replacing it. New is always better. This is the original spark plug that was in it. This is a Denso. But anyway, I'm going to check the gap on the original, which is about 0.35 inches, and in millimeters that's about 0.9, which is the correct gap. You want to be between 0.08 and 0.09. Basically between 0.3 and 0.4, right in there. So this is our shiny new plug, and now you might be thinking, hey, this thing's pre-gapped, why check it? Well, I'll tell you why, because oftentimes when these things are shipped, this can be bent pretty easily. So when that gets bent, that changes the gap. So it's important to check these before you install the bike, even if it's pre-gapped. So let's go ahead and check it, and perfect. That's right in the money. That's right where we want it to be. So I'm gonna check every single spark plug before I install it, and then it's going into the bike. It's never a bad idea to add anti-seize to the threads of a spark plug. And also it's a good idea to put dielectric grease on the insulator. Anyway, installation of the spark plug is pretty straightforward. You simply seat the spark plug onto the socket, then carefully lower it into the engine. Once it's seated, you want to very carefully and very slowly turn the plug and make sure it's not going in cross-threaded. It should thread in nice and easy. I used a swivel mount to help tighten it down, as there's very little leverage with the swivel. Now that you have it tightened down a little bit, you should torque it down to 12 Newton meters. I didn't use my torque wrench though, and just went by feel. This is not recommended, as if you mess this up, you could do some serious damage. Once the spark plug is torqued down, you can remove the extension and reinstall the coil by firmly pushing down until it clicks into place. Once that is done, you can reconnect the wire and you can move on to the next one, which I will do the rest of the spark plugs off camera. Now that the spark plugs are finished, I need to do something about this chain. Because cleaning chains is probably the most boring thing to watch, I'm just going to give you guys a before and after. And look at those results. This chain really came back to life. I used modal chain cleaner and an O-ring specific chain wax, and man, I couldn't be happier with these results. This chain looks brand new almost. And yes, I know the sprockets could use a little love too, but I'll do that later. For now, I want to move on to something that's been bothering me for quite a while, and that's this fuel pump gasket. If you remember in the last episode, we had a nasty fuel leak. A fuel leak is no joke. At best it's a smelly annoyance, and at worst it's a fiery disaster. I need to be serious and replace this gasket with a brand new one before it's too late. As you can see with the two side by side, the gasket that was in there was in much worse shape than I originally thought. Good thing I'm replacing it. Here's the old gasket, and here's the new one. Yeah, I'd say that's a little bit newer, a little bit different looking. Brand new gasket. Now it's time to reinstall the airbox and fuel tank. I waited to see if any gas leaked out, and after waiting a full day and seeing no drops, I knew the gasket was doing its job. Next up is an oil change. But before we change the oil, I'm going to start the bike and let it warm up. This is to allow the oil to drain a little bit faster. And I suppose as it's warming up, I'll show you guys that there's no longer an FI light on the dashboard. Turns out that Servo Buddy did its job. Whoever tightened this before me was an idiot. Just want that to be known. This way. There you go. Just a little bit of leverage is sometimes all you need. They had that way too tight though. Also, for those of you who are complaining in my top 5 things I hate about my RC51 video, and I said that you have to remove both sides to get to the oil, and you were saying, oh, well, you gotta get to the oil from the other side because that's where it leans to. Look at, this is the fill side right here. You just go down right here and boom, it's right here. Not sure why Honda can do that with the RC51. Well, the oil doesn't look too bad. I don't see any metal shavings or anything like that. No milkiness to it. Seems alright. Alright, well it finally finished draining, so now you put the new one back on. I noticed that doesn't appear to be a crush washer on it. Let's see if it's on the engine. No crush washer. I don't know if this is supposed to have one. I found a washer for oil changes. It goes like that. And we'll just tighten that down by hand. Now that it's tightened by hand, we're just going to put a little bit of torque on it. Alright guys, just to show you, this is what I did. I kind of made a little funnel with aluminum foil, so hopefully that'll dribble out and not get all over the headers and make a smoke show. But in my experience, it still gets on the headers and makes a smoke show, so we'll try our best, see what we can do, but I'm expecting a lot of smoke. A lot of these K&N filters, what they have is this nut on the end, which is supposed to be easier to remove and install. I don't like these. They tend to leak. I don't know, tons of horror stories of these rivets popping out and leaking and everything and cause you to crash. If I were you, I would always stick with OEM. Try to avoid these if you can. This came with the bike, so I'm going to use it, but I really don't want to use it. If this bike's a good bike, then I'll probably end up changing the oil again in like, I don't know, a month and putting in an OEM filter on. But for now, this will fit the bill. So one recommendation with this, when you install it, only install it by hand. Do not put something on the nut. Putting strain on this nut will increase the likelihood of this stripping out or this leaking. So just only use your hand. But to remove it, you can use a wrench. So that's what we're gonna do. There we go. All right, I loosened it. Sorry, you guys probably can't see anything. My tripod's not that short, unfortunately. But it's an oil change. What do you really want to see? There you go. Actually, looks like our little funnel trick did a good job. So another thing to know with the oil is always make sure the gasket comes off the filter. If it doesn't, then it's probably stuck on the engine. What can happen is you can sometimes forget to check that, and you can put a new filter on without removing the old gasket, and it causes it to leak. So let's take a look. And it looks pretty clean in there, actually. Doesn't look bad. So filling up a filter with oil is optional. You don't have to do it. I just put a little bit in there. I don't fill it to the top. Maybe a little bit more than that. Just trying to get it kind of wet. Take some of the oil and put it around the gasket. Kind of lubricate everything. Lubricate the threads. All that stuff. I like to just make sure this thing's not completely wet. Or completely dry, rather. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our new oil filter. important thing is that the old oil is out and the new oil will be in shortly. So we're just trying to tighten this as far as we can by hand. Try not to pinch it too much. All right, it's full. Time to start it. Alright guys, well I'm going to end the video here. We have the brand new oil change done, new oil filter, fresh oil. Also have the new spark plugs in there, all gapped right. And of course we have the clean chain, clean and lubricated. And yeah, we also have a, the clean air filter that I have in there as well. Fresh fuel pump gasket. I think the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the radiator, drain out the coolant. And maybe I'll go ahead and rebuild these brake calipers. I also have leaking fork seals, so I'm probably going to have to do the fork seals on this. I've already tried the Steelmate and that thing failed. So anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a good one. Take care and bye-bye. Let me live my life, the one I'd better lead. All the plans of fantasies, and we looked at them 11 ways. You said, look at me, I looked away.